When I saw that little boy frozen in the middle of the street with a speeding car heading straight for him, my construction worker instincts kicked in, and I dropped everything to save him. Tyler Martinez had wandered into traffic outside Lincoln Elementary, and I managed to scoop him up and dive to safety with seconds to spare. I thought it was just another day, another close call, until drones appeared outside my apartment window and federal agents knocked on my door. Learning that Tyler's father is federal Judge Roberto Martinez and that I'd actually stopped a terrorist assassination attempt by the Mountain Freedom Coalition changed everything. What I thought was simple heroism became my entry into a world of federal security and protecting the families of people who risk their lives upholding justice. Hi everyone, welcome to Life's Changing Stories. Now, let's dive into today's story. The rhythmic pounding of Sophie Walter's jackhammer echoed off the concrete walls of Lincoln Elementary School as she worked to repair the damaged sidewalk that had been buckled by Denver's brutal winter freeze-thaw cycle, her safety vest bright orange against the gray March afternoon, while children's voices drifted from the playground just beyond the chain-link fence. At 32, Sophie had been working construction for 10 years, long enough to know that the 3:20 p.m. dismissal bell meant she had about 15 minutes of relative quiet before the chaos of pickup time would force her to shut down the heavy equipment and wait for the flood of parents, buses, and excited children to clear the area. Sophie had chosen construction work not because it was easy. The physical demands, weather exposure, and constant noise took a toll that she felt in her bones every morning, but because it paid better than most jobs available to someone with a high school diploma and offered the kind of straightforward problem-solving that suited her practical mind. While other women her age were climbing corporate ladders or building families, Sophie was building sidewalks, laying foundations, and creating the infrastructure that kept communities functioning, finding satisfaction in work that produced tangible results she could see and touch. The job site at Lincoln Elementary was supposed to be routine. Replace 50 feet of cracked concrete, repair the wheelchair ramp, and resurface the crosswalk area where thousands of small feet had worn away the safety striping over the years. Sophie had been working alone since 7 a.m., methodical and focused, taking pride in the precision of her work and the knowledge that her repairs would keep children safe for years to come. She never imagined that her construction skills, quick reflexes, and willingness to act without hesitation would be exactly what saved a child's life and inadvertently disrupted a carefully planned terrorist attack. As the dismissal bell rang and Sophie prepared to power down her equipment for the mandatory safety break, she had no idea that 3 blocks away, a man in a gray sedan was checking his watch and preparing to execute the first phase of an assassination plot that had been months in the planning. The intersection of ordinary heroism and extraordinary evil was about to transform Sophie's simple life into something she could never have imagined, proving that sometimes the most important moments come disguised as routine Tuesday afternoons in suburban Denver. Sophie Walter had been operating a jackhammer outside Lincoln Elementary School for most of the afternoon, systematically breaking up sections of damaged concrete that would need to be replaced before the spring rains made the sidewalk even more hazardous for the hundreds of children who used it daily. At 32, Sophie had spent 10 years in construction, working her way up from general laborer to skilled equipment operator through determination, reliability, and a willingness to tackle jobs that others avoided. The work was physically demanding and often uncomfortable, but it paid well enough to support her modest lifestyle and allowed her the independence she valued. The elementary school project was routine maintenance, replacing buckled concrete sections and repairing the crosswalk area where winter weather had created dangerous cracks and uneven surfaces. Sophie took pride in work that would improve safety for children, understanding that her precision and attention to detail could prevent accidents and injuries. At 3:20 p.m., 5 minutes after the final dismissal bell, Sophie was preparing to shut down her equipment for the mandatory safety break required when children were present. The schoolyard was beginning to fill with the controlled chaos of pickup time, with parents arriving and buses queuing up for the afternoon departure. As Sophie reached for the jackhammer's power switch, she noticed movement in her peripheral vision. A small figure had appeared in the middle of Pine Street, the busy road that ran directly in front of the school. 7-year-old Tyler Martinez, wearing a red backpack and carrying a soccer ball, had somehow wandered into the street and now stood frozen in the center lane, apparently overwhelmed by the approaching traffic. Sophie immediately saw the danger. A dark sedan was approaching at high speed, showing no signs of slowing down despite the school's own speed limit and the obvious presence of a child in the roadway. Tyler seemed paralyzed by fear or confusion, unable to move towards safety as the vehicle bore down on him. Without conscious thought, Sophie dropped her tools and sprinted the 30 feet between her work area and the street. Her construction boots pounded against the pavement as she calculated the timing and trajectory needed to reach Tyler before the speeding car did. Sophie reached Tyler with approximately 2 seconds to spare, scooping him up in her arms and diving toward the sidewalk as the sedan's bumper missed them by inches. The impact with the concrete was painful. Sophie felt her ribs compress and her left shoulder scream with pain, but both she and Tyler were alive. The sedan did not stop or slow down after the near miss, disappearing around the corner as if nothing had happened. Tyler was crying, but appeared unharmed, mostly frightened by the sudden danger and dramatic rescue. A crowd of construction workers, school staff, and parents quickly gathered around Sophie and Tyler. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but Sophie waved off their attention, insisting she had only bruised ribs and scraped palms. Police officers took a statement about the speeding vehicle, but without a license plate number, there was little they could do to pursue the matter. Sophie's foreman gave her the rest of the day off, and she went home thinking she had simply acted on instinct, doing what anyone would do when a child was in danger. She had no way of knowing that her split-second decision had just prevented a carefully orchestrated terrorist attack. 3 blocks away from Lincoln Elementary, a man in a gray hoodie sat in a coffee shop, watching news coverage of the incident on his laptop. The local reporter was calling it a heartwarming story of an everyday hero, but the man's expression never changed as he closed his laptop and made a phone call. "It's me," he said quietly into his phone. "We have a problem." That evening, while Sophie was heating leftover pizza in her small apartment and nursing her sore ribs, she heard a low, mechanical humming sound outside her second-floor window. When she investigated, she was shocked to see 3 sophisticated drones hovering outside her building. These were not recreational drones. They appeared to be military-grade machines with multiple rotors and sophisticated camera equipment, all pointed directly at her apartment. Sophie's heart began racing as the drones repositioned themselves, forming a triangular pattern around her building. She reached for her phone to call 911, but before she could complete the call, there was a knock at her door. Sophie opened the door to find 2 people in professional attire standing in her hallway: Agent Sarah Chen from the Department of Homeland Security and Colonel Marcus Thompson from U.S. Army Intelligence. Both carried briefcases and badges that looked authentic and intimidating. "Ms. Walter," Agent Chen said, "we need to speak with you about what happened at Lincoln Elementary this afternoon." Agent Chen explained that Tyler Martinez was not just any 7-year-old. He was the son of federal Judge Roberto Martinez, who had been presiding over high-profile terrorism cases for the past year. Judge Martinez's family had been under federal protection for 6 months due to credible threats against their lives. The incident this afternoon was not an accident, Colonel Thompson revealed. It was an assassination attempt designed to intimidate a federal judge. By intervening, you prevented a terrorist attack. Sophie stared at them in disbelief. You're telling me that what happened today was intentional? Someone was actually trying to kill that little boy? Agent Chen nodded grimly. The people who planned this attack now know that you interfered with their operation. They've identified you as a potential target. The drones outside your window are security measures. You're now under federal protection. Colonel Thompson explained that Sophie had gone from fixing sidewalks to being hunted by terrorists in the span of 8 hours. The attackers hadn't planned for someone like Sophie, who would risk her own safety to protect a child. The agents revealed that surveillance footage from the school showed the dark sedan circling the area 3 times before the attack, waiting for Tyler to be isolated from adult supervision. The attack had been deliberate and methodical, timed to occur when the child would be most vulnerable. Sophie's intervention had allowed authorities to track the vehicle, identify the driver, and begin investigating the organization behind the attack. The terrorist cell that had targeted Tyler was part of a larger group called the Mountain Freedom Coalition, which had been threatening federal judges, prosecutors, and law enforcement officers across multiple states. The coalition believed the federal court system was corrupt and considered judges like Roberto Martinez to be enemies of freedom. They had moved beyond threats to direct action, targeting at least 23 families of federal employees. Judge Martinez was currently presiding over the trial of Daniel Cross, the leader of a domestic terrorism ring that had bombed 2 federal buildings in Colorado and Wyoming. The trial was scheduled to begin the following week, making the timing of the attack particularly significant. Previous attempts on Judge Martinez's family included a break-in attempt at their home 2 months earlier and sabotage of the judge's car the previous month, both designed to appear like random crimes rather than coordinated attacks. The driver from the afternoon's attack had been identified as Kevin Morrison, a former military explosives expert who had been dishonorably discharged 4 years earlier and was linked to at least 6 domestic terrorism incidents across the western United States. Agent Chen and Colonel Thompson offered Sophie a choice. She could be relocated with a new identity to disappear from the terrorists' radar, or she could help the authorities dismantle the larger organization. What you did today gave us our first real breakthrough in 22 months of investigation, Agent Chen explained. Your actions allowed us to trace the vehicle and identify key members of the coalition. Colonel Thompson emphasized Sophie's unique qualifications for helping with the operation. She had proven she could stay calm under pressure, make split-second decisions when lives were at stake, and do the right thing even at personal risk. They showed Sophie photographs of other federal employees and their families who were living under constant fear because their parents had chosen to uphold the law and protect democracy. After considering her simple life and thinking about Tyler's terrified face, along with all the other children who might be targeted, Sophie agreed to help. "What would I have to do?" Sophie asked. Colonel Thompson explained they would set a trap at a construction site to capture coalition members who would attempt to eliminate Sophie as a witness. If Sophie helped with the operation, Agent Chen promised her days of fixing sidewalks would be over. They were offering her a position as a federal security specialist with the Department of Homeland Security. The new role would involve protecting families of judges, prosecutors, and other federal employees, similar to Tyler Martinez's family. The position paid 3 times her construction salary, included full benefits, and provided training at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. The trap was scheduled for the next morning. As intelligence indicated, the coalition believed Sophie had seen Morrison's face clearly and could identify him in court. The next morning, Sophie reported to the Denver Community Center construction site, which was filled with hidden federal agents posing as workers and supervisors. She tried to act normal despite intense anxiety about what might happen. At 11:47 a.m., Morrison and two accomplices approached Sophie, identifying themselves as safety inspectors. When Morrison reached for what appeared to be a weapon, federal agents emerged from concealed positions and surrounded the three men before they could react. The takedown was swift and professional, with all three terrorists in custody within minutes. 2 hours later, Agent Chen showed Sophie intelligence recovered from Morrison's vehicle, including detailed plans for attacks on 8 different federal facilities and a plot to bomb Judge Martinez's courthouse during the cross-trial. Colonel Thompson revealed that Morrison had been coordinating with terror cells in 6 other states, and his arrest had prevented a coordinated attack that could have killed hundreds of people. Sophie realized that her decision to save Tyler had led to stopping something much larger and more deadly than anyone had initially understood. 3 months later, Sophie watched Judge Roberto Martinez sentence Kevin Morrison to life in prison without parole. Morrison's arrest had led to the capture of 24 other coalition members across 7 states, preventing attacks that intelligence analysts estimated could have killed over 400 people. Sophie's new job with Homeland Security had provided extensive training, new skills, and a community of people dedicated to protecting others. The increased pay allowed her to move into a better apartment and helped support her elderly mother, while the work gave her a sense of purpose that went beyond personal satisfaction. After the sentencing, Tyler Martinez approached Sophie with his parents. "Thank you for catching me when I fell," the little boy said, giving her a hug that made all the danger and uncertainty worthwhile. Judge Martinez also thanked Sophie, explaining that her bravery had saved more than just Tyler's life. The intelligence gathered because of her actions had prevented attacks that would have devastated multiple communities. "You did what we all hoped someone would do," Judge Martinez said. "You chose to help when help was needed most." 6 months later, Sophie received a call about a federal prosecutor's 9-year-old daughter who had gone missing from a school playground in Phoenix. As she raced to the airport for an emergency flight, Sophie realized that saving Tyler had been just the beginning of her real life's work. She had learned that heroism wasn't about being fearless, it was about being afraid and helping anyway. Sometimes helping one person leads to helping hundreds more, and the most important choices we make are often the ones we make without thinking, guided by instinct and compassion rather than calculation. The construction skills that had taught Sophie to work quickly under pressure, assess dangerous situations, and solve problems with limited resources had prepared her perfectly for federal security work. Her background had given her credibility with working-class families and the ability to blend into communities where other federal agents might stand out. Years later, when Sophie would speak to groups of young women about career opportunities in federal law enforcement, she would tell them about a Tuesday afternoon when saving one child changed everything. Not just for her, but for hundreds of families across the country who were protected because one construction worker chose to drop her tools and run toward danger instead of away from it. The jackhammer she had abandoned that day was replaced by sophisticated security equipment, surveillance technology, and the kind of meaningful work that used her skills to protect the people who risked their lives every day to maintain justice and democracy. Sophie kept Tyler's thank you drawing on her office wall as a reminder that the most important construction work she had ever done wasn't building sidewalks. It was building a safer world for children like Tyler, one rescue at a time. The Mountain Freedom Coalition's plot to intimidate federal judges through violence had backfired completely, leading instead to a stronger, more coordinated federal response and the recruitment of someone whose loyalty to protecting others would prove invaluable in the ongoing fight against domestic terrorism. Sophie Walters' transformation from construction worker to federal security specialist proved that heroes aren't born. They're revealed in moments when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things, regardless of the personal cost or consequences. We hope you enjoyed today's story of love, life, and betrayal. For more free stories and entertainment from our channel, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe with notifications.